This is the Leadership Podcast, and we study leaders. This is episode 484, featuring Brandon Sawalich, President and CEO of Starkey. Thank you for joining us today. This is Jim Vasilopoulos, founder of Rafty Advisors, and this is the Leadership Podcast.
Hey, everybody. Jan Rutherford here, founder of Self-Reliant Leadership. Thanks for making us a part of your day as we study leaders. And gosh, we're at 484. Plus, Jim, we've had 12 mastermind episodes. That's 496, actually, episodes we've recorded.
Technically, yes. There's an asterisk, but we're getting there.
Yep. And Jim and I are working on that 500th episode. We think will be really great. We've tried to make all of them great, but we're really trying to make that one special. And we promise it won't be a Jim and Jan episode. And you can find all our past episodes at theleadershippodcast.com.
Yeah. And this episode is proudly sponsored by Darley, wonderful company. They're trusted by all the people that support us and keep us safe. Warfighters, firefighters, first responders. And they've been doing that since 1908. Their mission is dedicated to equipping these folks with the essential tools they need for mission success, from firefighting pumps, drones, and tactical solutions to everything else you could imagine. Discover more about this incredible company and the people who serve our nation's heroes at Darley.com. That's DARLEY.com. Darley, you serve others, we serve you.
Thanks, Jim. And our guest today is Brandon Sawalich. He's the president and CEO of Starkey, leading over 6,000 global employees in 29 countries. With over 30 years of experience, he drives innovation in hearing healthcare, advancing Starkey's mission to help people hear better and live better lives. And there's so much more to your bio. Brandon, what do you want to bring out that maybe we missed? Maybe something that's not in the public bio?
For myself, yes, there's a lot out there, but for me, learning and leadership is, natural, but I grow every day from many, and I do a lot from reading history. I'm a history buff. So history and NASA geek, right? I love study that just from love reading about things. So you've got the lessons learned that I take a lot from history, American history, and presidents and generals and biographies, and then I've got the innovation and taking the risk from the space side.
Yeah, we've had a NASA astronaut on the show, Terry Virts, who's down in Houston running for office, actually. And Jim, who was the person we had on the show that talked about history providing lessons, like the things that you didn't know from history?
Well, there was Talmadge Boston that talked about the presidents, which I think is really interesting. And then there was, oh my gosh, I'm blanking out.
You'll think of it.
Yeah, I will think.
You always do. You always do. And Brandon, you also mentioned a little bit of a baseball thing you got going before we started recording.
Yes, I've only told a few people this, but on September 27th, I'm a 48-year Cub fan, diehard.
Cubs.
And I'm going to be throwing out the first pitch at Wrigley Field, the Cubs against the Cardinals.
Big game.
The bitter rival, yes. And it's right at the end of the season. So hopefully it's for something, but as I said, I could be, everything I've done in my life, I have a feeling will be defined in that moment.
Wow.
Balance it. But as we talked about, it's the experience, the fun, and the opportunity.
Well, real quick Cubs story. Jim and I were on a glacier in Patagonia when we got an alert on my satellite device letting us know what, Jim?
Well, first off, we have to say we were only supposed to be alerted on the satellite device in case of emergency. Okay. Someone passed away. Something really bad. So we got an alert in the middle of this glacier in Patagonia. And, everyone kind of girded themselves for hey, something's bad. And Jan comes walking back towards me. And I'm like, because I had elderly parents at the time. And it was to let me know, and my other buddy, Kevin, who's a Cubs fan, that the Cubs had made it to the World Series.
Yeah.
I remember that day, and I remember the last out, just like millions of others.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Jim had on his backpack, I'll never forget, when I think of Jim on the glacier, I think of he had a Cubs patch on the back of his backpack. And I don't know why that's seared into my memory, but.
Well, you go everywhere around the world and you run into one.
Yeah. Well, we're really glad to have you on the show. And I grew up in healthcare on the pharmaceutical side of things, so not on the medical device side. But I tell people all the time, even go back 30 years, there was a convergence of technology in healthcare, even a long time ago. And I'm wondering how you see that, over 30 years, how you see that today with AI. It's even in the hearing aids now. I know that. How do you see leaders balancing the innovation with the human element industry that's so personal to people's well-being?
Hearing is essential and is personal. You're right. And, the ear, everybody's ear is different. It's like a fingerprint. Nobody has the same type of ear. So when you're talking about hearing technology and what we do, it's misunderstood a little less, now than in the past. Because in the past, when I started at Starkey 31 years ago, it was hearing aids were associated with whistling and something, the stigma of I'm old and different technology. You're right. Analog devices and then digital devices came around in the late 90s. And now, all the way through, we were the first to pioneer using AI starting in 2017. And we're in our 8th generation now and leading in our industry. And, you talk about the personal care, it's pairing the device that is always thinking, analyzing, doing always on AI and deep neural networking and other types of technology I won't bore you with, but it's valuable because you've got to have the technology and then you've got to pair it with a hearing healthcare professional who has to fit this device where you forget that you're wearing it for 14 hours a day. And, it's not just about, sound and amplifying sound. You have to personalize and customize something in a very personable business because you have to, care. And hearing healthcare professionals have to care about the patient in front of them. And it's better hearing with a human touch.
Yeah. And again, from a leadership perspective, you've got end users, the patients, you've got intermediaries, physicians and audiologists and other healthcare professionals. You've got distribution, you've got all that. So what's the challenge for the leaders at Starkey? Not the frontline folks dealing with patients, but what's the leadership challenge? Again, giving all these steps before you get to the end user and helping people stay connected to that.
You have to design and make products that are easy to use. So we have to know the patient, right? And
Mhm.
you have an evolving demographic per se, as you have more of the traditional patient, aging, and then you have the digital patients coming in. That's more of your telehealth, your telehearing. And so with comes that those, demographic shifts are feature needs. Who's going to use what? So from a leadership, it's getting the team together and aligned. If we're going to be investing over 100 million new technology and product line, it's getting the team together and making sure that we have the needs of the patient in mind.
Mhm.
So being privately held, I don't have to worry about, stock analysts and
Yep.
stock price. Our priorities are simple, and I say this every time. What's best for the patient is best for our customer is best for Starkey.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well said.
So, obviously you've said, you're a student of leadership. It's something that you're passionate about, you're passionate learning about. And obviously history. And there's a lot of history. This is Starkey's a family founded company. And you've, built it into a global brand. What are the challenges from a leadership standpoint that you've kind of faced trying to kind of protect that culture, but also to grow the business? And, what are the lessons you might have learned along the way?
Yeah, it's really, again, it's getting back. I've a lot of lessons learned, but now I feel I'm going to learn something every day. And I tell people, and you guys have heard this a lot, I'm sure, you have to make your mistakes. You have to fail in order to, improve yourself and move forward. If you're going to fail, fail fast.
Hmm.
And it starts with people. And it's, we talk about culture. Starkey's culture is very strong. I just did a state of Starkey. Yesterday. I do one 3 times a year. Alignment, communication, all the employees, 5,000 employees, and how are we doing? Where are we at? Where are we going? Right. And transparency. And it's getting those people's culture and who we are. And as I say, we hire for attitude and develop the talent, because that attitude has to fit within the Starkey culture. And number one is that teaming, and you have to have caring attitudes. You have to care. If you're in healthcare, what we do, you have to care about the patient and the products that we're working on. And then, yes, you have to have the talent, but we could develop the talent. And if you got, we all know, nothing's perfect, but if you got somebody that's not the right fit, you have to, be able to have the courage to hit that head on and make change.
Yeah. I'm really curious about the developing talent side, not because I don't believe in it. I, 100% believe in it, but an observation I've made many times on the podcast, but like one that I'm kind of curious about is that, back in the day, we had big training programs you'd bring in, they would indoctrinate you in things. Then there was like 10 layers of middle management. So there was always someone there to kind of like put their arm around you and teach you things. And organizations don't necessarily do those kinds of programs anymore. And we're much flatter than we used to be. So tell us a little bit about how the care with which and the intentionality that you have to do to try and make sure that we are teaching, training, mentoring people with the right attitude to kind of grow into the roles and skills that we have within the organization.
And I think you're right. The word mentoring, right? And you could remove the word training. It's mentoring and experiencing and learning by experience. And for me, I've learned a lot from mentors and people, customers, the patients. I've had a front row seat in this industry actually since I was 8 years old. My grandmother started in the industry back in 1959. And, for you get in the industry and you get it within Starkey, the training is really what I call the Starkey way. I mean, it's not, not branding anything, but just setting that mindset of, if you want to be successful, here's how we do things. So our training is really developed around mentoring, and a lot of our, people from my executive team and others that have been here for a while. If you're going to be successful, here's what you need to know, learn, because it's on them too. We can deliver it, but we know that we got the right type of person in the seat. And that's also a way to see are they invested? Are they invested in themselves, to get better? Because you talked about training of the past, and I'm always mindful of making sure that somebody's not coming in here and they just read a book, and now we're going to have a book of the month type training because they just read something that inspired them. That can be great, but no, here's what we do. So I don't want 20 different programs. I want one way.
I appreciate that.
Brandon, you talk about the power of kindness. And our last guest, we had a really interesting guest last week on mattering, and a psychologist from CSU that talked about that. So you talked about the power of kindness, and how do you make sure that purpose and values don't get lost in the pressures of hitting the numbers, and then that balance of that kindness with, you have a responsibility to produce results.
Right. And it's, to me, it's how you talk with a person. Look, I'm CEO, president and CEO of Starkey. But as I tell the people here is, I work for you. We all have to hold each other accountable, because as I said earlier, big believer in the team approach, because we're all working on the same products and technology and various programs, but we're under, the Starkey name. So it's one team, one Starkey. And then you got to start with that vision. Several years ago, vision was simple: to be the best. I want to be the biggest. I want to be the best at what we do. Excellence matters, and it's excellence without exception. And the company is close enough, and we're working, I'll say, on a lot of the same projects where, and you can see who cares or who's who's pulling their weight or not. And if they're not, then you have a discussion. It's not about coming up and say, well, you didn't produce this much of this. We need to sit down and talk. It's kind of sitting down and a little bit of a, human approach. Common sense is, hey, tell me what's going on. Is something, everything okay? You're not hitting. So it's really how we talk with people in respect. And I'm big into that, meaning we respect each other. I'm not sharing anything that's, wow, that's amazing. It's kind of the, what we talked about, the books that, I read, ones that that grasped to me was John Wooden, Leadership.
Yeah.
And very common sense approach. I mean, obviously he had a lot of talent at what he did and made himself better, but that's where I kind of come from is making sure that if I'm talking to somebody, treat them with respect, talk to them like they're a person, and what do we need to do to make this better?
Yeah. When you said you want to be the best, how's that defined? Is there a metric, a qualitative or quantitative metric for
Well,
that?
it's one of those things where, I don't use excellence or commitment to excellence or all these slogans and put banners up. I have a very consistent focus and vision. In our industry, you have to, it's all about sound quality. You have to make products that is easy for the patient because of, again, average first time user is around 65, 67 years of age. So you have to have something that is easy for them to use, understand. Some will use an app and all the other features that come with it. Some just, most people get hearing aids because they want to hear better. And then there's some other things that come with it. So to be the best is, yes, you have to run an efficient company. We have to be excellence in our operations and then have the best hearing aid, best sounding sound quality hearing aid in the world. And then, the rest is going to follow because, what we're doing right now, since we've launched our latest technology, is really, yeah, you want to grow market share, but it's also the mind share. And it's becoming the best, having the reputation for the best technology in our industry too, because it's a small industry around it. We, as you said, we don't sell directly to the end user. Our reputation is quality, and it's to the hearing healthcare professional, and then eventually, yes, the patient.
Yeah. Hey, just curious aside, I'm guessing kind of like eye care, is there like 2 or 3 companies that have 80% of the market in hearing aids?
The hearing aid industry is made up of 5 companies in the world. Starkey is the only U.S. owned and operated. The other 4 are European companies, 3 in Denmark and 1 in Switzerland.
Isn't that interesting? 3 in Denmark. Huh. I wonder why that is.
Starkey was here, started in 1967 because there were hundreds of hearing aid companies when Mr. Austin started the company. And then technology came, so it consolidates, but where all the talent was. So it's usually, where the talent pool is.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That makes sense. Hey, before I throw it back over to Jim, just a reminder that this, like so many of our past episodes, are sponsored by the Darley Company based in the Midwest, and they've been a trusted partner to the U.S. military and first responders for over a century. That's a long time. From mission critical defense equipment to innovative firefighting solutions, they ensure our heroes are equipped for success. And you can learn more about this great company and their dedication to excellence at darley.com. That's DARLEY.com.
So, Brandon, you talked a little bit about how you keep your company at the forefront. You're investing in AI, you're doing all kinds of new technology. You got to be the very best. What do you do as a leader to make sure you're the very best and you're sharp?
That I'm always available to the team if they need it. Me personally, over the years, I think that working harder is better. So yeah, doing emails at 2 in the morning or, all that stuff. I've learned a balance. And I know if somebody's listening to this that no, they ain't really no way. It's gotten better. I always, depending on what's going on, but for me, it's just like coming on here and talking to you. I know I'm going to learn something. And for me, it's, yes, asking questions, but I'm always curious. So it goes back to the history part, right? I want to know the history or how do we get there? And so, I always try and better myself, excuse me, off of others' experiences. And, I have to take care of myself, my health and all that. We all know what we need to do for oneself, but it's really knowing when to shut off the switch and recharge and how much better I feel when I do that. I know it's a novel concept, but I guess it takes age to finally get over your ego.
Yeah. Well, at a personal level, I find it, comforting that so many of the things you said, whether it's, taking care of yourself, recharging, or being curious, are very consistent with the leaders we speak with. I mean, there's nothing new there. And so I just think that's, a takeaway for me. There's some thematic things to people who are really killing it and doing well. The one thing I'm kind of curious by, you started off saying like being accessible to the team. It's a little bit different than it used to be. It used to be like, I have an open door policy, come on in, but I don't know if people are in the office with you or if you guys are all back or if you're using Teams and Slack and stuff like that. How has being accessible changed, over the past 10, 15 years for you?
You know, COVID, I mean, obviously threw everyone for a loop. We're back on campus and in the facilities and everything full time. And, and that's, when COVID hit and there it happened, just like with others, for us, being who we are as a culture, collaborators, teaming and stuff, it's just like, wow, you hire somebody for customer service and they can't, pop their head up and say, hey, can you help me with this? Because then you got to schedule a call. I mean, so for me, accessibility, I try to, I get caught in the email trap at times. But people if I'm walking around, like I kind of walk the park as they say, kind of walk the campus today. And, people come up to me, but a lot of times I hear, oh, I don't want to bother them. Or I didn't want to do this. And I kind of get it kind of hurts my feelings because I want to hear what's going on. And I talk about the state of Starkey is, anybody can email me, anybody can stop by if they need a question or if they have an idea, because I want to, I empower the team to do what they feel is right that can make Starkey better, their job. How do we be more efficient? How we be better for our internal customer experience and our external customer experience?
So Brandon, a running hypothesis I have and some other colleagues have is that people like you are absolutely completely overwhelmed. And what's happening in the work world is there's a high amount of disengagement. People aren't committed. Now, you have an organization that literally changes lives. Do you find that that's a challenge for you, or do you think, hey, we get to say, we improve the quality of life of people. This is way easier to keep people engaged. I'm not overwhelmed. I've got plenty of time to do strategy and one-on-one development. Or are you right in the bucket with everybody else?
No, no, number one, I'm not overwhelmed because I'm really grateful every day that I come to work and I'm not trying to be, corny and everything. I love this company. I've been here 31 years and I'm honored to have the job. I didn't seek out this job. But when it was time, Mr. Austin asked me to, and I love strategy. It's like chess. I'm very forward looking. I'm looking up and out. If whatever happened in January, I can't do anything about it. Numbers are numbers, percentages are percentages. How's the product? How's our customer service, customer satisfaction, and our employees engaged? We do an annual engagement survey, which I just shared yesterday with the team. And you have to trust your team. You have to trust the people you hire. I got married in May, and I went on a 2-week honeymoon, and I can't remember the last time. I don't think I ever took 2 weeks off. And I don't think I ever called in, to be honest with you. And because I trust the team and the people we have here, they're seasoned, they're good. And guess what? Everything was here when I got back. So, our employees are engaged, and the data shows that too. And I share what we're good at, what they say we're not, and how do we get better. So, for me, is that up and out looking, I'm already thinking 2030. What do we need to do to stay ahead? And I think that's what my role is for the team. Is my job is to be looking up and out, and that strategy and protecting and building the brand and our quality and our service and everything that comes with that, because I represent them and I represent Starkey.
Yeah, you're making me think again. I'm glad to hear that. I mean, it's refreshing. The observation I've made, in addition, is the companies that have people that have been there 3 decades, are really different than the churn and burn. And we were talking about sports at the very beginning before we hit the record button. You look at the Steelers. What are they, on the 5th coach ever? Something like that. I mean, interesting franchise.
Jim and I are Bears fans, so we could go a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Quarterbacks,
Well,
coaches, yeah, yellow.
but there's something to be said. I mean, that's just really interesting that it's not the typical churn and burn that you've got. People that are there. And, the company I was at today doing a workshop, it's the same thing. People have been together for decades. There's loyalty, there's trust. There's those types of things versus, the churn and burn and the quarterly focus.
Well, it's that whole team approach, because I don't want toxicity on executive team or any of the teams. And there's no ladder climbing. We're very open, transparent. We have a process.
Yeah. Well, you're really fortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's part of being privately held, because we're making decisions on what's best for the people of Starkey, our customers, a patient, and you don't have all the that's needed for public companies, depending who they are and how they run, but all that, kind of looking over your back, or we have that camaraderie here. And part of that also is because, as you mentioned in the first part of this question, our products and what we do and how you keep them engaged. We make products that instantly change people's lives, and our employees and the teams can see it instantly. We share testimonials. They see it, with the patient fittings we have here on campus, our partnership with the Starkey Hearing Foundation, because when you turn on, our technology, you're turning on that light bulb in that patient, and you see it in their eyes. And then the smile, I call it the hearing smiles, right? You kind of just see it, it's addicting. And our employees get to be a part of that, and they see it. So that creates that purpose and that engagement.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. What I think is really interesting is, like, you are at this just wonderful place. Okay. And, it's rarefied air, like, kind of company that's run well, being very intentional about who we bring in, making sure that we get bad apples out and that we take care of people. I mean, all the things we say you need to be doing to have engaged employees, which is, like, once again, rarefied air these days. If you look at all the studies that come out. So, you're in a good place. But you usually don't get there overnight. It's not like I was always in a good place. Usually there were some things that shaped you and helped you get there. Tell us a little bit about, maybe if there's a story or an anecdote or something, some pivotal moment that said, like, this really shaped my perspective, or maybe even solidified it in a way that is super meaningful for you today.
Well, I think there's the life lessons, my career here, and whether, I started in 1994, and then, really went through sales, marketing, ran sales and marketing. And so I have strong relationship with customers. So I've had daily, many, many stories that have probably shaped how I think, how to approach people, how to talk to people, and things like that. Um, you know, Other things that had shaped me, two things that would stand out is, our industry was really under the radar, until the last 5 or 6, 7 years. And why that is there was a big push in Congress and legislation to get over-the-counter hearing aids, accessible and pass. Well, we're a FDA regulated medical device, and you had companies, some politicians that aren't there now, but we're doing it for the wrong reasons. That was revenue. Well-known brands were trying to get over-the-counter cheap hearing aids, cheaper because hearing aids cost too much. Well, they don't know what hearing aids do. They don't know what goes into it, but it was just an easy talking point. So we're going to make consumer electronics allow them to sell hearing aids. It's just the amplifier, and amplifying sound into someone's ear, just like an AirPod can, but they're more advanced. And it wasn't right. And I stepped in 2017, chairman of Hearing Industry Associations. And my second home, really, the last 10 years has been Washington, D.C., and educating people on what today's prescriptive hearing technology is. And yes, the over-the-counter bill did pass, and finally, like 2022 and 2023, regulation came out by the FDA, and me and some others, but led the way in shaping and helping the FDA and others work together on what that regulation is. And so I learned a lot about, those people didn't work for me, right? You think about it, if you're the CEO or president, you're kind of paid, and people know that. So I'm sorry about that.
That's okay.
And you're paid, and so you're work. If you're a volunteer or politician or whoever, you have to influence. So, these people didn't work for me, but my experience from others helped, I'll say a trusted expert voice. And then I learned from them, and I learned a lot in that process of how a bill becomes a law, you might say, and that whole process works. And don't have to do that for a while, but all's good. And then COVID, I think that's the other thing is going through COVID. I don't care what degree you have. I don't care. There is no way. Nobody, had that, the blueprint or book on how to navigate through that. And I remember sitting in here, it was March of 20, and the associations in our industry sent out letters, start closing your hearing aid clinic, your practices down. And I remember saying, like, what are we going to do? I mean, it's just like we're a ship that is rudderless and just adrift and just burning cash because we don't deal with the end patient, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our livelihood depends on those clinics. And I remember thinking, we're going to get through this, but never again. I'm not going to never put Starkey in a position where, we can't interact or, somehow we have to, this is where we need to invest and advance in our infrastructure and some things, but your priorities come in, clear pretty quick. And I had to stop, slow down and stop, or we were going to burn through $300 million in 2 months. And then I had much bigger problems and nothing coming in. And so very smart people around me. I don't have the the degree and such that they did, but I saw people freeze. I mean, and working as a team, and I just had to push some people out of the way and just do what I thought was right. Common sense. And no other, directive except do what was right for Starkey and the people and get through this. So many lessons through that, but I always wanted to stay ahead. I wanted to I didn't want to wait for the, Minnesota State or whoever to tell us what to do. I was proactive in making sure that we were one step ahead of what I thought they were going to do or what we needed to do and be ready.
Yeah. It's interesting because I think there's, I never really thought about it until you were just kind of articulating the last couple stories, because sit there say like the luxury of being in a private company is I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
If it makes sense, I can do whatever I want. But like you've also got this bureaucratic constraint of, let's say, government regulations. And, that is really can be an intimidating thing. And then to even think about like climbing the mountain to try and like influence legislation, which is about as opaque a process as you could probably consider, that has to be quite a challenge. And so tell me a little bit about like the yin and the yang that go with that, whereas like I've got this ultimate flexibility, but I don't.
No, in hindsight, if I look, Mr. Austin, he's still very active, 83-year-old, that is in his, giving back. You kind of look at life, you earn, you learn, and you return. And he's in the return phase where you've got the philanthropic, and he's providing hearing help to those that can't afford it. And he trusts me. I have his trust, and if I need his advice, I will go to him and get it. But he is also one that, he founded the company, he owns the stock and everything, and he wanted to move fast, and he didn't want anybody else to just, his sandbox telling him how to play. So he gets it too, the bureaucracy and decision, layers and stuff. And we try and cut that out. And, I still, as I said, use mentors or, an advisory board. And I look to my executive team for that, the people I have around me. And then I will go and talk to customer service, say, hey, what are the customers saying? So, the downside, I haven't found it yet. Everybody says, oh, well, private companies and, you're going to need all this equity and all this, flush of cash. And we're fine. You know, I haven't stumbled on anything because that's allowed us to move quick, to be agile, and you know, Mr. Austin allows and trusts myself and others to make the right decision for the company. If we make a mistake, he knows it. Make a mistake, learn from it. You know, it's okay to be wrong. Just don't make a habit of it.
Love it.
Yep. Hey, Brandon, I'm curious. There's a question I like to ask as an executive coach, and that is, to CEOs, and I'm going to ask you, and I'm curious. You can answer it either personally, or you can say what you think most CEOs, the way most CEOs should answer it. But this is a question: what's the one thing that you're working on every single day to get better at, that's going to provide the greatest return on time, energy, and dollars for you, the team, the organization?
Well, you kind of first thing that popped in my head, and here's how I would answer that: is my time management. And am I spending, the time on, 20% of the things that are going to make the 80% impact for the company? And, you can also, the meetings and all that, you try and weed all that out because people need to talk to you, talk to them. But I try and limit the one-on-ones and everything. But it's really time management and making sure that I'm not complacent. As I say, complacency has no employee number here at Starkey. You got to be, comfortable being uncomfortable, and, take the risks. And it's really, I'm pushing myself, I guess. I'm never satisfied.
Yeah.
I'm hungry for because I see our potential, and, the people of Starkey are going to tell me if I'm doing a good job or not. I'll fire myself. So it's not being complacent and being satisfied. And I'm always pushing myself to, yes, run through the list. I missed something, or what about this? But always I've taught myself how to run my own internal process and then focus on what matters.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to, we had a guest on that had the same framework that I have about leading yourself, leading others, leading the organization. And then he goes, you want to know what the fourth one is? It goes back to leading yourself. And that's what you just described. Is
So you have to lead yourself
discipline
before you lead others. I say that all the time. You got to be
Yeah.
of your leadership down. Well, how do you define leadership? I ask that in most of my interviews. There's no wrong answer. It's just how they believe what they believe in.
Yeah.
For me is, I'm not going to ask anybody to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. And I'll get a cup of coffee. I'll pick somebody up at the airport. Whatever it takes. Because again, that's the team approach, and very much, lead from the front.
Right. Hey, well, this time flew by, but as we kind of wrap up, again, you're talking to a whole bunch of leaders, government, nonprofit, military, business leaders, people frontline, C-suite. You're talking to a whole bunch of people right now. What's your parting counsel looking at today into 2030?
Don't be blockbuster. Push yourself. I say, innovate or die. And you've got to have the courage, to change, because change management, people's afraid of change. Everything changes in our lives every hour. I mean, what I thought I was going to wear in the morning, I'm wearing something different, but that was changed. It's how you frame it. And it's, you got to personalize, but you got to push yourself, and it's okay to push. I know what speed to push Starkey, so you don't crush the hull of the aircraft carrier. I know how hard I could push. And you want somebody to get better, because in 5 years, I want to be 10 years ahead. That's why I tell the team, we're 5 years, we're going to be 10 years ahead of the competition. So don't lose sleep over the competition, lose sleep over, are we making progress or not? Are we getting better? Because complacency kills.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Time has flown by, and we thank you so much. We really appreciate your time today, Brandon.
Thank you. I appreciate being on.
Yeah. For our listeners, that's all we have for you this week. We'll include ways for you to connect with Brandon in our show notes, so make sure to visit us at theleadershippodcast.com. And remember, I like this one a lot. I have learned silence from the talkative, toleration from the intolerant, and kindness from the unkind. Yet strange, I am ungrateful to those teachers. Khalil Gibran. That's a wrap.
Thanks for listening to the Leadership Podcast. To listen to more shows or to access the books and content discussed on this show, be sure to visit theleadershippodcast.com. The material in this podcast is copyright by Rafti Advisors and Self-Reliant Leadership and must have written approval before commercial application.